Max, welcome to the New Female Leader Show. How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you, Carlene. It's very nice to see you again.
Yes, I'm so excited you're here, Max. And before we start, I would love to properly introduce you to our audience. So here we go.
Okay.
You're an author, three-time TEDx speaker, and a global breathing teacher. Your TEDx talk, Breathe to Heal, is approaching 2.5 million views on YouTube. Wow. You've developed your own disruptive way of looking at breath work, and you have field tested all these methods and seen great results around stress, anxiety, post traumatic stress syndrome, as well as sleep disorders.
Yes.
Yeah, so you're the author of two books. There's No App for Happiness, which addresses really the challenge of finding meaning in the digital age we live in now, and A Life Worth Breathing, published in 5 languages, and you're now working on your third book. Well, I had the honor to participate in one of your 200-hour teacher trainings, and I know from my own experience how powerful breathwork is, especially when you are an ambitious achiever like most of our listeners are. So, Max, I'm super excited to dive into breathwork with you, and I'm very grateful that you're here.
Thank you. I'm grateful and happy to be invited. Thank you very much for including me.
So, Max, you're the expert, according to me, in breathwork. And what I really like is that you're specifically interested in bringing the practice also into the business world. So, what is it about breathing, and why is it so important that the conscious breathwork is practiced in the business environment as well?
Well, whether we're at home or in the business environment, we're still human beings with emotions and we carry stress and it manifests in our body. This is why intense stress gives us a stiff neck and shoulders and disrupts our sleep. So, whatever we're feeling emotionally or stressed about mentally comes through the body. Uh, so, if we want to perform at a superior rate at our work, it means we have to be in a superior state.
Mm,
And we can't really do that or be that unless we have some control over our emotional state.
mm,
And so if we're running on empty, we're exhausted and we are full of fear or anxiety, and maybe with a touch of rage, I call it an emotional cocktail, just a little parsley, then we're not going to do well. We're ultimately we're in a downward spiral,
yeah.
and we're going to crash. We're going to have a burnout or something like that. Breathing exercises can mitigate this, can regulate
Hmm.
our emotions in this way. Therefore, to me, it's critical that everyone learns them so that they do not ever have a burnout or have panic attacks. These are things that mean it's already gone too far, that we have
Mm,
ignored our own well-being enough that it's gone too far. And so I teach breathing techniques that help us home and work. Now, the hurdle that people need to overcome is is to have a new understanding of what breathing is, because most people have a very, very small idea of what breathing is. And they're right, but their idea is incomplete. In other words, if I were to ask most of your listeners, why do we breathe? They would say, well, breathing is to bring in oxygen and to expel CO2. And this oxygen feeds the blood, and the blood feeds the whole body and the brain, et cetera. And I would say that's 100% right. But
mm,
what else does it do? What else does breathing do? What's its second primary purpose? And almost nobody knows the answer to this. So I'll tell you so we can save time. The answer is when you were born, you inhaled, and the second thing you did as you exhaled was start to cry. Our breath is the engine for emotional communication with other human beings, starting with crying. We are speaking now, you and I, using our breath. We use it all day long to communicate. And as we know, when we communicate with another person, we're communicating with the text we're speaking, so to speak, the words, but even more so with the tone of voice
mm,
and the facial expression and the body posture. where people decide, is Max really comfortable speaking about this, or is he happy, or is he sad today, or did he not sleep enough, or maybe I don't trust him, or maybe I really trust him. These are all things we get from verbal communication that we can't get from a text message with an emoji. You can lie about how you're feeling with text message and emojis, but you can't lie if you're standing in front of someone nearly as effectively. They will see through it and will know if you're authentic or not. We decide very quickly if we trust someone. As a mother, many of your listeners are mothers, and you're going to hire a babysitter or take your child to childcare. You look in the eyes of these people and decide, will I leave my little child with this person or not? Based on like a 4-second instinctive, intuitive analysis. So our breathing is part of our emotional communication.
And that reminds me, Max, of one of the things you've mentioned during the training, also that the lungs are so related to to grief, really, and to sadness. Can you tell a bit about that?
Yeah, the traditional Chinese medical physicians, it's called TCM for short, and acupuncture comes from that. They've been studying these things for about 1,000 years, and noticed early on that the lungs have two primary emotions associated with them. One is grief, and the other is inspiration, which is its opposite. Yeah. And when we're inspired, we take really deep breaths, and our body posture is upright. You remember me talking about this. And our face lifts and our eyes get bigger, and we have a ton of energy. When we're inspired, we don't need much sleep. We have so much good energy, and we might forget to eat. We're so excited. But when we're in grief, it's the opposite. We have very little energy. We want to sleep a lot. We become antisocial. Our head drops down. Our shoulders move forward. Our chest pulls away. And then we have this thing we call crying that happens. And you know from the sound coming from the other room, if someone is crying, that they're feeling a grief, they're having a grief response to something. And this is universal across the world.
Yeah, and I also remember very well that with the breath work we did, that very often in our group, or you gave some examples also how people actually responded, emotionally, really on the on the exercises we did. And I remember also for myself that I was in quite a I was in a very busy period during our training, and I remember that any thing I really had like pushed away somewhere came out through the breathing, really.
Yes, that's exactly right. So we repress or suppress a lot of emotions that we're taught as children are not allowed. And grief is one of the first ones. Even if your parents said it's okay to cry, you go to school and you cry because you fall down, and the other kids point and laugh, you realize, oh, I cannot cry here. I'm going to get mobbed or shunned if I cry. So you learn really fast at school what's allowed and what's not allowed. And that's why by the time kids are 13 or so, they're trying to shut down a lot of their emotions. They're not allowed to show that they're afraid, or they're lonely, or they're frightened. I already said that. Or they're upset, grief filled, and in some cases angry. Some people don't feel the right to express anger. And so we push these down. This continues with us as adults. And we don't know how to talk about these things. That's one of the biggest problems in our society, is even if you really love someone or even married to them, you might not know how to communicate with them about difficult subjects, things you're ashamed of or angry about. And so we just don't talk about them. And these emotions don't go away because it's not just an emotion, it's a thought process, and sometimes it's a memory in the case of post-traumatic stress. And so we push these things down, and then you walk into a breathing class, no matter how busy you are, and you start doing the breathing patterns, and all of these emotions come back up. And it's amazing. And then people listening might think, well, why would I want to do that?
Exactly. I don't want that.
No. I had one man say, there are things that I don't ever want to remember again or feel again. Why would I want to do that?
Right.
And the answer is very simple. It's right in front of us. The question is, well, how's it going the way you're doing it now? You know, I deal with people with severe anxiety, and I say, well, do you want to live with anxiety the rest of your life? Do you want to medicate yourself the rest of your life? Or would you like to move past this so it's no longer a part of your life? I completely believe, not just a belief system, but through doing this work for 26 years, that we don't have to live with anxiety. We really don't, or panic attacks. And we can make these changes fairly quickly. But you can't suppress these feelings and memories and change. It's like I make this joke, human beings are willing to do anything to change, except change.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
so the goal is not to open things up and make you feel bad, and then we finish the class and everybody goes home.
No.
The goal is that you open it and you see it in a new way and you reconcile with it so it is over. This is no longer a frozen part of your life. It comes alive again. We complete it. It's finished, and you can move on in a state of acceptance.
Yeah, you can really let it go.
Mm-hmm.
So Max, you've coached a lot of CEOs and high level business leaders, and I'm just curious, what have you noticed about their challenges, and how has breathwork been beneficial to them?
Almost 90% of the CEOs or high level executives that I've spoken with are living a lie. And what I mean by that is they put forth to their colleagues and employees that they have it all under control and everything is great and they're having this great project and we're moving forward. But then they go into their office and they feel like they're about to lose it. They all have anxiety with a very small exception. Many of them have panic attacks, which is when they come to me because they're so humiliated to start having a panic attack in front of someone they're trying to make a deal with, who wants to buy their company or something really important. That's when the panic attacks happen. That's when they come to me. And so they're coming apart in private. They're not sleeping well. They don't see their family very much. They might have anger issues. They're exhausted. And they know that they're living an unsustainable life. Many of the ones I've spoken to have said, what I'd really like to do is leave this company and start a small company that actually helps people. Because, and they'll say one of two things, either I've gotten to the top of the ladder in the best office, but now I want to jump out the window. Or I find the ladder's leaning against the wrong wall. And some have said, I have everything now. I have power, prestige, but I have no meaning. Mm. And so once you achieve your goals of power, prestige, wealth, material wealth I'm talking about, and then you find out, wow, I'm not happy and I'm exhausted and I have panic attacks. Then they say, now what? Now what? I'm on a nice tropical island for my vacation. I'm in a hammock, swinging happily near the blue water with the colored fish, and everything is perfect, but I'm a mess inside. I'm not happy. Mm. So then we start discovering, well, what is happiness? And so that's when they come to me and realize that they have no meaning. They're tormented from the inside out. Right. And their power and prestige has not fulfilled them.
And have you noticed any differences amongst female and male leaders in this respect?
Well, yes. I would say that in North America and Europe particularly, women have been more on a journey of self-discovery and well-being much longer than men. I mean, I started teaching yoga classes in 1990, what was it, 4 or 5, something, somewhere in there. And 80 or 90% of the students were women, not just in my class, but all of them.
Right.
So it tells you something. Well, why aren't the men coming? And women always scratch their head. I'm thinking, why don't men come? Why aren't they here? And it's improved somewhat over the years, where maybe now it's 70% women. So there are more men coming, but basically women have, for let's say 35 years, looked at healing their bodies through yoga, through massage, through breathing, perhaps breathing practices. They read books on self-help. And you might not know this, but 80% of self-help books are purchased by women.
Wow. Yeah.
It's almost the same number as the yoga classes, you see.
Yeah.
And if you look at some of these TV shows, let's just use Oprah Winfrey as an example, and shows like it, 98% of the people in the audience are women.
Yeah.
And there are no shows like that for men.
Not true. Yeah.
So if you look at that, you realize, wow, the men, we really haven't gotten started yet to where we want to change, and we're not embarrassed to. We're excited to do it, and we have a stack of books next to our bed on these subjects, and we do our practice every day. In the corporate world now, I see men starting to turn to things like stoicism and mindfulness, but still nothing that involves the body or the emotions. And stoicism is a very non-emotional, linear sort of philosophy, similar to some kinds of Buddhism. So these are the differences I notice. And therefore, to answer your question, the corporate environment, it's similar, where the woman I'm talking to might already go to a yoga class. She might already be eating well. She might have read 50 books on healing oneself in some way, or spirituality. And the men might just be opening their thoughts to the possibility they might do one of those things.
Right. Right. And well, I've conducted now about 40 interviews with female role models, and what I've noticed is that basically all of them have some sort of practice or routine to, let's say, counterbalance the challenges they have in their life and to really stay connected to themselves. And I found that very interesting. Really, they all came up with something, And I was wondering if you give your view on that, because when you talk about success, and you do also in one of your TED Talks, aren't we thinking about success in a complete, wrong way, and we really have to create like this work or practices next to it to be able to cope with it, really?
Yes, that's right. We have a lot of recalibration to do that we need to do in society. And I think that's one of the reasons why now there is so much upheaval. I think many people are upset and are not even sure exactly what they're upset about, or can't articulate what they're upset about, because we've been the frogs boiling in hot water for some time. For example, if you look at the 8-hour workday, and you say, okay, well, in the last 10, 15 years, we have all these things now, even 20 years, we have all these things like computers and the internet and smartphones and apps and Bluetooth and all of these things we have to help us in business.
Yeah.
Now, the logical assumption then would be, oh, great. So you were working really hard for 8 hours, but now you have all of these tools. So now you could probably get the same amount of work done in 4 hours. So does that mean you all work a 4-hour day? No, people are working 16-hour days. It makes no sense. We finally get things to help us, and we just work twice as hard to produce 400% more than we could 20 years ago.
Mm.
So my point is that the business world still isn't ultimately looking out for people. In other words, how can I create a company that will best serve people? And I think regardless of the gender of the CEO, the advice I often give is, let's start with the product. I mean, if you want your employees to be excited about the product, give them a product they can be excited about. So how about creating products that will help the world? You know, people will work for free on a product that will help the world. It's called volunteering for something that will feed the starving or heal the sick or create more justice.
Yeah.
And if they can make a living doing that, they'll be overjoyed. But if you try to get them really, really psyched about, as I use this example in my book, There Is No App for Happiness. If you try to get your employees really psyched about creating Halloween costumes for dogs, you might have a problem. And that's not saying there's anything wrong with Halloween costumes for dog, particularly if you make them on your own. But if there's a factory in China that's polluting the air and polluting the river and working people to death to create Halloween costumes for dog, then there is a cost that we don't see, but it's there, that harms the world and harms people to create something we do not need. But if you create a product that people can get excited about and know that their 8 hours a day means something, morale will be very high. So that's the place to start. And then your relationships are what you're going to remember in the end more than the money. Once you have enough money to live well, you know, in other words, when I say well, I mean covering all of your needs and some extra, then focus on your relationships. That means your work relationships too. And I've worked with people who take care of their customers really well. They take care of their shareholders, and they take care of the top executives, and they squeeze and almost crush their employees. And this is a model that can't succeed ultimately. So these are just really basic, to me, models of behavior. How do you want to be remembered? What are you doing in this world? And I think very easily you can make a difference and make money at the same time. There are people that are doing this right now. You know, if you look at Elon Musk, Tony Robbins, who is not making his money from his talks anymore. He's invested in all kinds of companies. He's a multi-billionaire now because of that. Or Peter Diamandis, who Diamandis and Elon Musk, for example, have the SpaceX program. They have the X Prize Foundation, where they give people huge prizes for their inventions that will help the world. They set a criteria like, can we end poverty in 10 years worldwide? Go. And people around the world are trying to do this, and they still make a lot of money in their field. So figure out a way that you can help the world. Make a product or a system or an action that helps the world. Figure out a way to earn money from that. Take care of your employees and take care of your own well-being and health. And I think that's the holy grail. I think that's the algorithm to being able to sleep just fine at night, even though you are a CEO.
Yeah, I really love that, Max, and it really taps into also what we mean by new in the new female leaders. And I remember when I came up with this name, I didn't really, you know, exactly knew what I meant by new. And now I start to understand it better and better. And yeah, the whole idea that we're not only focused on that bottom line is so important part of that new leadership. And yeah, and I'm also excited that you hear more and more often that people feel, okay, we want to take care of yes, we want to take care of the company, so in order to have, we need to build a sustainable model that so that we need profit, but yes, there's also people and planet, you know. So let's start with people, let's start with planet, and then of course purpose is also like meaning, like
Yes.
what you're saying. Is that also how you look at new leadership, or do I miss something here?
Yes, I think we can agree that we both define new leadership in approximately the same way. That,
Yeah.
and I like that your intuition chose the word before your neocortex caught up. This happens to me all the time, where I'll know where I'm going, but I won't know exactly why. And then later, the rest of my brain catches up and says, "Oh, now I understand." My intuition is way ahead.
Yeah, yeah, it definitely works like that. So, all right, Max. Coming back to staying connected to yourself. Um, I know that you also made a transition there. Can you please tell our listeners about that? Like how, from your own experience, um, have you maybe lost that connection and found it back?
Well, I think what you're referring to is the change that happened to me when I found breathwork about
Yes.
25 to 30 years ago, before I was teaching it. Um, I grew up in a household, sort of a typical European-based household, I would say. One American parent, one European parent. And both of them taught me the same thing through their actions, not their words, which was don't express pain. Just deal with it and keep going.
Mm.
Don't show fear. Don't cry. Keep your anger down. Don't talk about anything you're ashamed of. And if someone's not yelling at you, you're doing a good job. This is the environment that I grew up in.
Mm.
And the cost that I paid for that was very high, because once I became a grown man, I didn't know how to talk about feelings. I didn't know how to express them. And I was very uncomfortable if someone became very emotional. If someone really started to cry or became angry, I had this panic warning light go off in me that made me feel like running away.
Mm.
And I think it's because when we learn to suppress certain emotions like shame, fear, grief, anger, the heart's not that selective. If you start pushing these down, you start pushing everyone's down as well. Inspiration, love, joy. I felt like I was living in a prison that I had made with my own hands.
Mm.
My heart, so to speak, my emotional heart was locked in this prison and it could not get out. When I started practicing yoga, which included really high level breathing, because I was lucky to find some good teachers early on, I didn't know that I would get this benefit. I wasn't there to heal my emotions. I was there to help my lower back and to sleep better. That's it. But I started feeling better emotionally every day. And I did sleep better within one class. And my lower back felt better within 1 week. But I couldn't believe how much better I felt inside. And over time, I started to feel more and more, and tears would come more easily, because there was a time when I didn't cry for something like 10 years. No matter what happened around me, there were no tears. So it's like finally I got out of this prison that I had made. And not only did I feel different, but people started to tell me, you seem different. You seem happier, lighter, you smile more, you're more expressive. And so I finally figured out there was a very big change happening in me slowly that I had not bargained for. And I was very grateful for this. It improved my relationships, all of them. And then, of course, that was just the beginning. Once I learned more and more about breath work and psychology, over time, it improved my level of intimacy, emotional intimacy I'm talking about, and connection with people. And this made my life much more meaningful than it was, and far less lonely, I must say. Because you can even be, as you know, as everybody listening knows, we all know somebody who's in a marriage, or maybe it's us, that is more lonely than our friends who are single, because you can be in a relationship and still be desperately lonely if you don't know how to connect about your emotions.
Yes, absolutely. And what I hear, Max, is that like you've done a lots of inner work, right? And I'm curious what your view is on the importance of inner work and for leaders, um, because as far as I like from my own experience now, I see that, and also listening to all the role models that I've talked to, I feel like becoming a better leader is actually a huge part of that is knowing yourself better.
Mhm. That's exactly right. I completely agree with you. If you read about great leaders in history, they were very interesting people. They thought a lot about things. In
Mm.
fact, some of them are philosophers as well. And there's no accident there. Like you said, the people who are just driven, they can be a kind of a leader. They can push a group of people to get something done. But that's not really leading. That's more bullying, really. I think that a lot of leaders are more bullies than they are leaders. Leaders, as I mentioned earlier, a leader can inspire people to work for them or fight for them if it's a war scenario, uh, because of their ideas.
Mm.
And because they teach by example. This is the most powerful way we can teach a human being, is by example. Alexander the Great, they still study in military schools today. He's considered the most successful general in the history of the world. Now, we're not here to talk about war, obviously. We're talking about leaders, though. But why was he so successful? One of them was how his men felt about him.
Mm.
When they were short on food, he would eat exactly the same food they ate. If there was no food, he wouldn't eat either. He was leading a march across a desert. They were all short of water, and they all wanted to stop. They were so fatigued, and he jogged. He went jogging alongside his army so they could see that he would not only walk, he would run. He wasn't being carried. He wasn't on a horse. He would jog alongside them, and he would talk to them as he would go alongside them. They thought, wow, okay, well, if he can do it, I can keep walking. And he was known for that. So his army was willing to follow him anywhere, which they did,
Mm.
past the boundaries of the known world. Now, let me just continue with Gandhi, a total non warrior, someone completely
Mm.
devoted to peace, still used similar techniques where he would talk to people in a way that they knew that they were understood by him, that they were seen by him. He knew what their trials and tribulations were, their hardships were, before he would talk about what he thought they should do.
Mm.
Teddy Roosevelt, who's I often refer to as the great yogi, Teddy Roosevelt, because if I had just read you a bunch of his quotes, you would think he was a yoga teacher or a philosopher, not an ex-president of the United States from 1900. And this is one of these examples. He said, people don't care what you think unless they know that you care about them.
Mm.
And so the key to leadership is for people to believe that you care about them and you understand where they are in their life. You can relate and they can relate to you. And once they believe that, they'll be quiet and listen to new ideas and can be led. To me, leading means that people are convinced that they should follow you. They're not just following you because of the paycheck or because they're afraid of you.
Mm. Beautiful, Max. Yeah. Yeah, and I feel that for such a long time we have um, mm, identified leading with the pushing, with the idea of that we had to do like more more results, more so-called success. And that also, and that relates to the things you said in the beginning, that we, as a leader, you shouldn't show your real the real you or something, right? Well, the CEOs and managers that you talk to, they were afraid of showing their anxiety. They were afraid of showing their stress, and they didn't talk about the fact they didn't sleep. So I guess that, and that's also what we hear more at new female leaders, is that it's so important also to see it in a more, let's say, holistic way, and
Yes.
not separate business from private, or pretend that you're a different person um in- at noon than you are in the evening with your family.
Yes. Yes. Authenticity is very powerful.
Yeah. And Max, on I would love to talk even, well, hours with you about this topic. Unfortunately, we don't have that long. Um, I wanted to talk a little bit more about breath work, because before I heard about breath work, I was already a meditator. You're meditating as well, and you teach that. But as you explained, um, there's something before meditation. And can you elaborate a bit on that?
I'd love to. And I'm glad you asked me this question. I was at the Inner Peace Conference about a year ago as a speaker, and I asked this question to the group. I said, how many of you believe you should be meditating every day? And almost everybody raised their hand.
Mm.
And I said, how many of you honestly meditate every day? And the whole room burst into laughter, and a very few hands went up. So, meditation is something that we believe we should do. We know that we feel better after we do it, but often we don't do it.
Mm.
We find it very hard to do, and we're constantly setting ourselves up for failure. Now, I believe the reason for that is because we are so stressed out, and so many people have anxiety and are exhausted, that makes the idea of sitting down and calming the mind seem like climbing a mountain. It's just too much work.
Yeah, it's really hard.
It is. So, what I advise people to do is to do your breathing practices first. Take 15 minutes, 30 if you have it, but most people will take 15. And do your breathing practices. And what will happen is you will calm down. The storm in the mind calms down. Then sit down for meditation. You'll find it's quite simple to fall into your meditation practice. So it's just the sequence of what to do first, not that one is
Mm.
better than the other. Do your breathing practice first, followed up immediately by your meditation.
Right, right. Yeah, I can definitely relate to that and tell from my own experience that it really makes a huge difference to do first breathwork exercises. In fact, when I was at the 10-day silent retreat in Thailand, was it last year or the year before? I don't even remember. I taught a few breathwork exercises that I learned from you, and it was so. And I mean, we couldn't talk, but later on, I got a very small paper from a girl, and we weren't allowed to speak, of course, and we weren't also allowed to write. And she thanked me for actually teaching those exercises, because she she almost left because she was so annoyed
Mm-hmm.
of her mind constantly chattering.
Mm-hmm.
And then when she did the exercises, she was able to sit much longer. So it was,
Very good. Well done.
yeah, it was a beautiful example actually of what you teach. So, Max, with the COVID pandemic, there's so many additional challenges in our lives, right? We have for entrepreneurs, for leaders, for employees. I mean, we all need to be adaptive and we go to struggles and we might even face anxiety or, and most probably more stress. So, and I watched a few of your videos on YouTube, and then you mentioned gratitude also as one of the most important antidotes to that feeling of anxiety and stress. So, can you please elaborate a bit on that and explain how it works?
Yes, thank you for asking that. It's one of my favorite subjects. And it's one of those things where when one initially hears of it, it can seem, the English word is insipid, ridiculously stupid,
Right.
childish, naive, and all those things. But if you try to think about gratitude, you really get nowhere. It is stupid. But if you can move your mental state into gratitude, it changes everything. Uh, I'll give you an example. Somebody asked me not long ago, he reads the newspaper, the old fashioned paper, paper news. And he said, I can hardly read the newspaper. It just makes me angry and I'm ashamed of the human race and I see nothing to be grateful for.
Mm.
And I said, how about the fact that you have eyes to read the newspaper? You can actually see. Do you know how many people without vision, how do you think they would respond if suddenly they had your eyes? Even
Mm.
if they're nearsighted and you have to wear glasses, the biggest day of their life. And that is just a different way of thinking. Now, how do you get to that true state of gratitude? And the way we do it is we actually go through a 3 to 4 minute process of visualization. So we end up in the state of gratitude because it seems like if our goal is to get out of a negative state, I mean, we're starting from this premise. I'm constantly angry. I'm constantly frustrated. I'm constantly annoyed. I feel like giving up. I feel sorry for myself. And I don't want to feel like that anymore. What can I do? Okay,
Mm-hmm.
now we bring it to gratitude. And that is something we can do in 3 or 4 minutes, change our state. And the heart, if I can just refer to the emotional heart, doesn't seem to be able to contain anger and gratitude at the same time, or being annoyed and gratitude. It's one or the other. As soon as it fills with gratitude, the other emotions are gone. And you feel really good and you feel really humble and you feel sane again. And you're much easier to be around for other people. I used to do this exercise 5 times a day. Now I do it about once a day or so. But I really needed it during a certain part of my life. Would you like me to lead the group through a gratitude visualization?
Yeah, let's do it.
So I'm going to lead us through a 3-minute visualization, okay?
Yes.
Right. So for your listeners, you have to be in a place that you can close your eyes. So don't do this if you're driving or on your bicycle. Everybody else, just to be clear, everybody else, close your eyes so that you can see more. And take 3 deep breaths while you listen to my voice. Just to get started, take 3 deep breaths. And the visualization is so simple. Pick someone from your life or from a long time ago that you feel immense gratitude for. Someone who changed your life, who believed in you when no one else did, or taught you the meaning of love. Do not go through your whole Rolodex. Choose the first person who comes to mind, and it has to be an adult, not a child. So I'm going to give you just a few more seconds. Whoever first jumps into your mind, choose that person today. Okay. Now imagine that this person is sitting right in front of you, just 1.5 meters away. And they're sitting there, very much alive and smiling and blinking and breathing. And this is the person who changed your life for the better at some point. So you have a chance to radiate all of your gratitude toward this person, to envelop them with your gratitude, as if it were your last opportunity to do so. Keep breathing and radiate your gratitude toward this beloved person. Keep breathing. And this person is very moved by your feeling and touched by it. And they look at you as only they can and nod their head to you as only they can. And they reach toward you very gently and touch you on the shoulder, as if to say, we will always be connected, you and I. Always. Through your eyes, let them feel your gratitude and take in theirs. Breathe very deeply for a moment. Feel the gratitude in the heart and how it makes you humble, grateful, and it can feel a little bit like love and forgiveness. Keep this feeling, but let the image of this friend dissolve and breathe into your heart, now full of gratitude. And when you're ready, simply open your eyes.
Thank you so much, Max. That was beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. My
Uh,
pleasure.
Max, my final question. Is there anything left you want to share with our listeners after this amazing visualization?
Thank you. During difficult times like now, when we have this pandemic, it's important to know that what we need becomes more and more simple, more and more powerful and more simple. And everybody needs mainly the same things. We need to be seen. In other words, to be seen for who we really are, not a mask we wear, or not for who you want me to be. I want to see people beyond their beauty, beyond their wealth, beyond their sense of humor, beyond their intellect, inside. And I want people to see me, the real me inside, and to be acknowledged. We all need to be loved for who we are and know that there's someone out there that wouldn't know what they would do without us. So we don't feel like we're ghosts walking around in a city where if we weren't here tomorrow, no one would even notice. It's time that we really try in any way we can to connect with people. And if you know how to do that, to teach by example. And people will always remember this. So people who reach out and really connect are never forgotten. And when we feel like we matter, we're seen, we're loved, we can keep going through difficult times. So that's my final message for the day. You do matter. And those of you listening, you do matter. You matter more than you think to some people. It's easy to forget.
Absolutely.
Reach out. If you can, hug them, literally hug them in some other way that you can show that you love them or that you care about them.
Thank you, Max. That's a wonderful final advice, and thank you so much for all the amazing insights and wisdom you've shared during this episode. Where can people find you and learn more about you and your work?
Well, thank you for having me again. It means a lot. I have a website, maxstrom.com, very easy to remember. And there you can find everything you would ever want to know about me, and all the social media, and my events and retreats and store and everything.
Great. So, if you are listening now to this podcast and you feel so inspired by this, by this content, you can share a print screen of the podcast and share it on your Instagram. Tag Max and tag New Female Leaders. And if you do, you might win one of Max his online courses, Breathe to Heal. Max, I really look forward to your new book. And I hope I can meet you soon at one of your events again. Um, Thank you all so much for listening and hope to catch you in the next episode. Thank you so much, Max.
Thank you. Thank you. See you soon, I hope.